Hello everyone. In this lecture, I would like to carry the discussion in the previous lecture forward. The previous lecture we had talked about the electric field, which is a vector field, and now I will introduce to you the electric potential, or to be more specific, the electrostatic potential, which is an example of a scalar field. So this is something that we had done, which we had encountered during the previous lecture when we are trying to find out the work done when I try to move a test charge. Let's say I have a point charge Q, and capital Q is a test charge, and I'm trying to move this test charge from a point A to point B along, let's say, this path. Now what happens is this charge Q, it sets up an electric field in its vicinity, and as this test charge moves, and if I want to make it move along this path, I should exert a mechanical force on this test charge. And when you try to find out what is the work done by that mechanical force, we find out that work done in moving it from A to B, that work done, it turns out to be like this. In case you're wondering how we got this expression, so I suggest that you go through my earlier lecture on the electric field. So there it will become clear as to how this expression came about. Now this integral on the right hand side of this equation number 1 is independent of the path. That is, it does not depend on what kind of path you are taking. It could be a straight line path, or it could be any arbitrary path, because when I integrate this electric field, as you all know, the electric field is inversely proportional to the square of the distance. And the electric field is also a central force, so that means this electric field will contain an r cap, right? R cap is the unit vector along the radial direction. Okay, r cap will be the unit vector along the radial direction. So from here, this is the radial direction. Let's say the charge is here, so this is a vector r, so r cap will be in this direction. And then we are taking a dot product with dl, so dl will be along this length. So r cap dot dl is going to give us dr, which is essentially the change in the radial distance, right? And we have dr, and then this E is going to give us a 1 by r square, and anyway this is a dot product, so it's going to give us a scalar result. So we have dr by r square, and when you integrate that, you will get 1 by minus 1 by r. And when you substitute the limits, you will get you will find that it will give us two terms. One term depends on the distance between this point charge and A, and the distance between this point charge and B. So it depends only on the radial distance. So that means it depends only on the endpoints A and B. It does not really depend on what kind of path you are taking. So you might as well take a straight line path. Okay, the result is going to be just the same. So if it is independent of the path, then we might as well take an alternate path. So instead of going from A to B directly like this, we might choose another point C over here. So this was the earlier path. Now I choose another point C here. So I could rather go from A to C, and then from C I could go to point B. So result is going to be just the same. So the work done in both the cases will be exactly the same. And of course this is because electric field is a conservative field. Okay, so when we had derived when we verified that the electric field is a conservative field, we have actually seen that. So now this integral that we have, the integral from A to B, okay, so we can actually split this up. I take the minus sign outside. So this integral from A to B, I split this up into two parts. So this integration from A to B can be written as an integration from A to C, which is this integral, and an integration from C to B, which is this integral. Okay, so I take this integration from C to B, combine with the and I get here. Now this integration from A to C, the integration from A to C, I could just reverse the direction. Suppose if I were integrating from C to A, then that is only going to contribute an extra minus term, again because the electric field is a conservative field. So here you can see here the lower limit was A and the upper limit we had C. So now the lower limit we have C and the upper limit A. So if we swap the upper and lower limits like this, it is only going to give us an extra minus sign. So we have this quantity minus this quantity. Okay, so this integral minus this integral. Okay, so now because C is an arbitrary point, okay, C is an arbitrary point, so why not take C at infinity? We might as well take C at infinity. So if I take point C at infinity, so I'll come to that in a moment, why we are choosing point C to be at infinity. So if I take point C at infinity, then what happens is in this lower limit and this lower limit we'll have infinity. Okay, so now coming to the point as to why we are taking C at infinity, that's because the electric field, it varies as 1 by r square. So when r becomes very large, the electric field is going to become very small. That means the influence of the point charge, the electric influence of the point charge at very large distances, that influence, it becomes almost negligible. So if the influence becomes negligible, that means the potential, okay, which you are talking about, which you are trying to find here, that is also going to become negligible. So when we take this point at infinity, then the result of this integral, okay, the result of this negative integral, I could just refer to this as phi. Okay, so because the C is like a reference point here. Okay, so where we had chosen, in this case, we could just refer to C as a reference point. So now it just happens that we take this reference point at infinity, because when the reference point is at infinity, that means over there we can safely say that the field is going to be negligible. So now we have this integration from infinity till point B, and then here again this integration from infinity till A. Now this is going to give me a scalar quantity. Okay, so this scalar quantity, I'll call it as phi of RB, because it's going to depend only on RB, because the lower limit is anyway fixed, because that's the reference point. And this integral, as we have seen here, it depends only on the endpoints. So one endpoint is already fixed, which is at the infinity. So the other endpoint, okay, is going to be B, so that this radial distance is RB, so that's why phi depends only on RB. So the phi value, if we call this as phi, this is RB, and if for this value, for this quantity phi here, the parameter is going to be RA. So this same equation, let me just write this down over here, just to stress upon the associations of the different terms. So this is equation number 3, the same equation number 3. So we had the first integral that was your phi of RB, and the second integral we had phi of RA. So this is what we have. So over here, phi of RA is basically this. Disregard the minus sign here, because anyway we have a minus sign in between. So this quantity will be basically whatever is there inside the bracket. So this is what we have here. So now because what is causing the electric field is a point charge, and a point charge, the electric field is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r square into r cap, and we substitute this electric field here, and then of course dl dot r cap is dr, as you can see from the previous lecture. So we have a q by 4 pi epsilon naught, which comes outside. These are constants, along with and they will join the minus sign which is outside. So we have dr by r square, and this is going to give us a minus 1 by r. That minus will cancel out this. So as a result, we will have upper limit 1 by ra minus 1 by infinity. 1 by infinity is going to be 0. So this gives us phi of ra is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by ra. In a similar way, phi of RB is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by RB. So in general, okay, the value of this scalar phi, the value of the scalar phi at any point r, at any position r, will simply be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q, the point charge, divided by the radial distance to that point. Okay, let's call this equation number 3. And as expected, when r goes towards infinity, the influence should vanish. The electric field vanishes, so that means this quantity also should vanish, because as r goes to infinity, then this denominator blows up, and as a result this overall quantity is going to become 0. So phi at infinity will be 0. So this quantity phi of r, as I have already mentioned briefly earlier, is what is called as the electric field due to this point charge q at some position r. So that this is basically, sorry, not electric field, the electric potential due to some point charge q at some point r. So this is basically the electric potential. But now we need to give it a more formal definition. So let's go ahead and define this formally. So I'll be requiring these two equations. So W, work done in moving a charge from A to B, is this q times this line integral, and the value of this line integral, we have seen it can be written as the potential at point B minus the potential at point A, right? So if we use equation number 2 in equation number 1, so all we need to do is this quantity on the right hand side, we just substitute over here, put it inside the brackets, and so we have work done in moving a charge from A to B is equal to q into phi at RB minus phi at RA. So in equation number 5, now you see these A and B, they are arbitrary points, so I could just choose them to be anywhere. So I could choose the point A to be at the origin, and point B to be at whatever at the point of interest, whose position is R. So in that case, we just this is going to change like this. So work done. So how do we read this? We read this as work done in moving a test charge from A to B. So this A we replace with infinity and B we replace it with R. So this W, okay, this quantity, the work term, how do we read this? We can read work done in moving a test charge from infinity till some point R, and this is going to be equal to Q times phi. What is RB? RB is R, so phi at R minus phi RA is infinity, so phi at infinity, and we know that phi at infinity is going to be anyway 0. So this gives us Q into phi of R is equal to W from infinity till R. So this gives us phi at R, the potential, okay, the electric potential at some point R is equal to this work term divided by Q. So in this case, if we put Q equals 1 coulomb, okay, let's say if we put Q equals 1 coulomb, of course we are realistically speaking, we should not be putting 1 coulomb charge, because that is going to disturb the very configuration whose potential we are trying to measure. But just hypothetically, let's say I put I make this Q to be equal to unit charge, that is 1 coulomb, then this work done, this the potential will be equal to the amount of work done. So this is the scenario here, and this enables us to define the electric potential. So we can define the electric potential in this way. Suppose I want to find out the electric potential due to this point charge Q at some point R, okay, so this position is R. I want to find out what is the electric potential over here. So all I need to do is I take a test charge, and this test charge, let's say, is having a charge of 1 coulomb. I take the test charge from infinity and I bring it along any arbitrary path, and I place it at this point R, okay, and the total amount of work that I need to do in moving this test charge of 1 coulomb from infinity till this point R, that amount of work will be numerically equal to the electric potential at this point. So this is basically the definition of the electric potential. So now we could use these vectors, the prime and unprime notation, which I had talked about in the previous lecture. We could use the prime and unprime notations to give a more rigorous definition of the rigorous expression for the electric potential. So the electric potential, let's say I have a point charge Q which is at some position R prime. If you recall, prime means we are referring to the source position, and unprime coordinates means we are referring to the field position. Okay, so of course this is a scalar field, so we are using R over here. So I want to find out what is the potential at this point due to this point charge. So what is the separation vector? The separation vector is R minus R prime. So we are only interested in this distance. So that means we need to find out the modulus of this quantity. So that is going to be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, whatever is the charge, divided by this distance, separation distance, which is modulus R minus R prime. So this is the electric potential with respect to a fixed origin due to a point charge. Now we could extend this idea further, because the electric potential depends, it satisfies the superposition principle. Okay, so we could use the superposition principle in conjunction with the expression, this previous expression, to find out the electric potential due to a discrete distribution of charges. So if I have, let's say, a lot of charges, Q1, Q2, Q3 and so on till Qn, n number of charges, then I could find out the total potential at some point due to this entire distribution. And the way to do that is I could take any arbitrary point. This arbitrary point, let's say, is the ith charge, which is Qi, and this source position is Ri prime, and again as before this is the field position, which is R. So the separation vector for between this source, this arbitrary, this ith charge, and this field position is R minus Ri prime. Then all I need to do is find out what is the potential due to this source, which is Qi at this point, which is, and that electric potential is phi I. Then all you need to do is just sum over this entire, all the charges in this distribution. So this total potential will be simply the sum of the potentials due to all of these charges. So therefore this phi at R will be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught summation of, due to this one, so I am just using the previous expression, Qi divided by modulus of this separation distance, which is modulus R minus Ri prime. So the nature of the electric potential, so we need to be it really helps to keep in mind a few facts. As you can see from this expression, the potential is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r. So the electric field, electric potential due to a point charge is inversely proportional to the radial distance. As you can see here, the potential is proportional to 1 by r, and that means as the radial distance, if it tends towards infinity, the potential will tend towards 0, and vice versa. And also the potential is directly proportional to the charge q. So if the charge is positive, the potential will be positive, and vice versa. The plot is going to be the reciprocal plot. So if I have a positive charge, this is how the potential is going to vary, and if I have a negative charge, this is how the potential is going to vary. So the potential due to a positive charge will be in the first quadrant, and the potential due to a negative charge will be in the fourth quadrant. So let's take an example problem where we use the electric potential due to a point charge and apply the superposition principle. So over here we have, let's say, 8 identical charges. So let's say we have 8 identical charges which are placed at the 8 corners of a cube. Okay, so each of these charges is having the same value, which is q, and they are placed at 8 corners of a cube, and the length of each side of this cube is a. So we need to find out the potential at 3 different places. Okay, so just to get rid of the distractions, I'm just removing the charges here, and I'm just naming these vertices. So a, b, c, d, e, f, g, h. So these are the 8 vertices of this cube. So the first question is to find out the electrostatic potential at different points. So first is I want to find out what is the electrostatic potential at the center of a side. So how many sides do we have? 1 side, 2 side, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 12 sides. So we need to find out the electrostatic potential at the center of any one of these sides. All of these sides will be identical because the distribution, the charges are same, and the distances between two neighboring charges is also the same. So so whether I take this side or this side or this side or this side, it really does not matter. Okay. So we are basically the question number 1, the sub question number 1. It is asking us to find out the potential at this point. Next is we have to find out the potential at the center of a face. Now there are 6 faces, so it really does not matter which face you choose. All the faces will be equivalent. So question number 2, we are supposed to find out the electric potential at this point. Let's say I choose the face A, B, F, E. So what is the potential at the center of this face? And the third problem is what is the electric potential at the center of the cube itself? So we need to draw body diagonals. Okay, so one body diagonal, 2, 3, 4, there are 4 body diagonals, and each of these body diagonals will have a point of intersection which will be the center of the cube. So we need to find out the potential at the center of the cube, which is the point which is marked over here. So I will be demonstrating to you how to solve the first sub question, and I'll leave the other 2 for you to try at home. So let's see the first question. I want to find out the electrostatic potential at the center of a side. Okay, so the electrostatic potential at point P. Okay, now remember we have 1 charge at each of these vertices. So there are 8 vertices. So at each of these vertices we have a 1 charge. So according to the superposition principle, I need to find out the potential due to each and every of these points. Okay, the electrostatic potential due to each and every of these points. So we will have a total of 8 terms. So for instance, the electrostatic potential due to this charge which is at position A, it will be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by Ra, right? Q by Ra, and Ra is this distance. The electrostatic potential due to point B, it will be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by this distance, which I am calling it as Rb, and so on for each and every point. Now it looks like a very complicated expression because it looks like as if we have to evaluate 8 different terms, but the answer is, I mean, it's not so difficult because if we can exploit the symmetry of this problem, and we can use the idea that some of these points, they are actually equidistant. Okay, you can see here in this diagram with respect to this point P, the points A and E are equidistant. Okay, just let me highlight this here. This point A and point E, these 2 points are equidistant. And what is the separation? From point P to point A, the distance is A by 2. So Ra, this Ra is A by 2. Similarly, from point P to point E, that is distance 1 by this Re is also A by 2. So this is A by 2 and this is also A by 2. Okay, so these 2 points, they are equidistant. Likewise, points B, D, F and H. Okay, B, D, F and H, these points are also equidistant. And finally, points C and G are also equidistant. So there are 8 points. Out of these 8 points, 2 points, these 2 points are equidistant. These 4 points are equidistant. So 2 plus 4 makes 6 points. And last 2 more points. So 6 plus 2, 8 points. So total 8 points. So that will take care of all the points that we have in this system. Okay. So now what we need to do is this long expression, it now gets simplified, because we know that RA is equal to RE. So I can just replace this RA and RE. I could just combine them together and write it as 2 by RA. In a similar way, RB, RD, RF and RH, these are equal. Okay, so because RB, RD, RF and RH are equal, so I could just combine all of them together and write this 4 by RB. And lastly, RC and RG are equal, so I could just combine them together and write it as 2 by RC. So this is the expression that we have. So all I need to do is find out what is RA, RB and RC. RA we already know, which is equal to A by 2. Now we need to find out RB. So to find out RB, just draw this triangle APB. Okay, just to show you again, we draw the triangle APB, this triangle APB, this triangle. Okay, so using this triangle we can find out this distance, which is RB. Oh, sorry, here this is RB. Here I want to find out this distance RB. So this is point A, this is B, this is P. So A, B, P, from this triangle we can find out what is this distance RB, and that's all we need to know. Okay. So A, B, P. So A to P, the distance is anyway, this is RA, which is A by 2. This is one of the sides of the cube, which is A. So all that remains is we need to find out RB, which is very easily done using the Pythagoras theorem. And when you solve this, we find that RB is equal to root 5 by 2 into A. In a similar manner, we can find out RC. Again, draw this triangle ACP. Okay. AP is again A by 2, just because it's from here, because this is RA. AC is a diagonal of one of the faces, and each of the faces is a square. So square diagonal of a square is root 2 times the side. So it is going to be root 2 times the side, which is root 2a. And last side is RC. So again, in a similar way, using the Pythagoras theorem, we find that RC is equal to 3 by 2a. So once you have got this RA, RB and RC, all is just a matter of just substituting them back into equation number 1. So in equation number 1, we have RA, we substitute this, RB, we substitute this, and RC, we substitute this. And just a matter of simplifying this and doing some algebraic manipulation. So this finally gives us the potential at point P for the first case to be like this. So this is the first sub problem which I have done as a demonstration. So I'd like you to try out the next 2 problems. So with this, I come to the end of this lecture. Thank you.